Andrii Telizhenko, it's such a pleasure to be sitting here with you today. Your story these past 10 years, and especially the past 5 years, truly captures and epitomizes the name of this series, The Weight of the State, because the weight of the state has been bearing down on you this whole time. Now, as a little note to our viewers, we are operating in very constrained circumstances here because Andrei is under sanctions, and you've also made it onto the Ukrainian death list. So we're here in an undisclosed location to protect Andrei's safety. And I should also say, in terms of the sanctions and the legal constraints you're under, we are not even able to offer you basic hospitality. I mean, we can't even buy you a coffee. That's the sort of Kafkaesque world that you're living in. Now, by my count, you are a three-time whistleblower. Three times you provided information to the highest levels of the US government, very important information, first to do with the 2016 election, then to do with the Trump impeachment in 2019, and then lastly to do with the Hunter Biden investigation, where you were liaising with the FBI, Senate, and so on. We'll get into all those details. But to kind of start at where this all ended up, your reward for doing that wasn't that you were thanked. You were sanctioned. This means that this was an administrative process, not even a process, really just a signature, that pretty much made you a non-person. In one stroke of a pen, your job was gone, your visas were gone, your bank accounts were gone, you couldn't travel, you couldn't get a new job, you still can't do that, you can't bank, you can't travel, you can't do any of those things that we all take for granted. Take me back to that day. When did you realize my life is not going to be the same again?
Yeah, thank you, Hans, for having me on the show. It's a great pleasure and honor to be with you. And yeah, I can. A lot of things has went by through these years, especially the last 5, 10 years, as you said. And I remember as right now, January 11th, it's 2001, 2021, sorry, how the sanctions were imposed. I got a call from a journalist named Christopher Miller. I was driving my car in Kiev, and he says, "Oh, how can you comment? You were sanctioned by the U.S. government, the U.S. Treasury, the State Department, and there's a comment from Pompeo. Well, we sanctioned these Russian agents, and a comment from the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. So, how we went after them and how we got sanctioned Telizhenko. So I can imagine, I can remember that day until the rest of my life because that's where I understood it's gone. Like I was put on the list where all the terrorists are, where bad people are, and not just bad. Now I can say that there's people who are innocent on there too. One of them is me. I'm going to speak for myself here, and so if I stopped my car, I couldn't believe it. I was like, I thought it was a hoax or some disinformation, or and I cried after I understood that it was true. I was like, wow. And it's not just because they said something true about me in those sanctions and what they imposed on us. 13048 executive order of the president of Donald Trump on election interference, which I did not do. I was a witness in everything you spoke about, and all the span of the 10 years of that period. I was a witness in everything that I could be, and I didn't ask for that. I didn't want to be a witness, but they lied. They lied in the sanctions, and that's what struck me. That connected me to people I wasn't connected to, which I didn't even know, or was not involved in, like Derkach. And I was like, this is some mistake because we all believe that the United States, there's some justice there, there's democracy, there's freedom. This is why I continue to push and move forward with, even though the stuff that were pushing against me during those years of getting that information out and being asked to help with the testimonies. And so I just understood that I was done. I was like, they're gonna go after me now, full force. I was afraid what's gonna happen next, because I was then put on a kill list in Ukraine right away, Mirotvorets. And a couple months later, Zelensky sanctioned me in Ukraine as a Ukrainian citizen, which is illegal, 2 days before going to Washington, D.C., just to show to the Biden administration that he's on with them, on board with them. So for me, it was like just a shock, and because like I lost everything. I lost my clients I was working with. They toxified me, lied and toxified me. If they said the truth, one thing, it'd be one thing. It was true. Yes, I deserved it. If I stole something, yes, that would be I would pay the price. I'm a person that I would face the consequences. I understood, but they lied. That's what struck me the most. And I was like, at first I thought it's done. The first 2 3 days, but then I said, I will not give up. I will fight this because the truth is on my side. I have nothing to hide. I was open as much as possible, and like my family was there with me, my daughter and my wife, and they backed me up at that time, and and I lost my relationship with my parents, unfortunately, because of they lost a lot of friends, and because of the so-called toxicity around me, and so I lost work, clients, everything. I had to sell my apartment afterwards later on just to survive, and so it was all that story uh, in one day, which is just a total collapse. So that was a heartbreaking. And I picked up the phone, tried to call people, nobody picked up. The line was dead at the other end. A couple of people did pick up, but just supportive messages. But most of the cases during the first couple of months, I was on my own. So it was really strange, and you're like vilified in front of the whole world, and by being lied on. So that was, I don't know, it was heartbreaking for me. Like I said, I cried. I never cry, but I cried that time because it was unfair.
Let's go back to the sort of happier days, right? Um, your journey in politics and kind of diplomacy and so on really started in 2014 or 2013, around that time.
A bit earlier, but the most moment during the coup in Ukraine, the so-called Maidan coup, everybody calls it, I can relate to that. I was part of a coup, unfortunately, and I want to apologize, and I do apologize every time I mention that because Ukraine was misled, a different path, but I was part of it. I saw what happened from it. Then I organized different things that were not supposed to be there.
Well, I think this is important because you've been portrayed as a Russian agent, but here you are saying it's the opposite. Because, of course, the 2014 situation was sort of Russia versus Europe, Russia versus the United States. And you're saying you were there supporting the United States.
I was on Maidan, not just an activist. I was unofficially the coordinator between the United States government and the U.S. Embassy in Kiev on the ground. One of the people who was doing that, and the Maidan activists, the leaders of the so-called revolution, the coup, and the opposition leaders, and that was my role. I was also part of the Euromaidan, coordinating with their work with the international relations issues with the European embassies, the German embassies, the U.S. embassy, the British embassies. I was organizing meeting with the ambassadors, and Senator McCain's trip to Kiev during that period of time with Senator Chris Murphy, which I want to say hi to. He mentions me in his tweets when I got sanctioned. He was happy about it. I was taking care of his security during that time. Big mistake. Sorry, but I have nothing else to say for that. But so I was there, and I saw it firsthand, and I saw how the U.S., the U.S. government, the CIA, was fully involved in this because basically my role was to meet the U.S. ambassador who used to come to the Maidan and the headquarters, and if I wouldn't come out of at a meeting place where he used to unpack from his car, he would not go out of his car and they would just leave. So basically, that was my role, advising on stuff on what to do, and getting insights on what's happening during the revolution on the streets to the U.S. ambassador, to the U.S. embassy. That's why I knew a lot of people at the embassy, which later on moved on to work at the White House, National Security Council, State Department, etc. So that was my role. Yeah, I was there. I saw it firsthand how it happened. Met with Newland during that period of time. Not because I wanted to. I was asked by the U.S. Embassy to organize a meeting for the leaders of the opposition, Yatsenyuk, Klitschko, with Newland in the Hyatt Hotel in December of 2023, where basically the idea of the Newland cookies, which Russia likes to talk about,
Right.
came up because she wanted to give out bread. And I was like, it's a bad idea.
So it was your idea to not hand out bread.
No, because I guess she was like, "Oh, I want to go to the people. I want to be famous in this." After swearing for like an hour on Yanukovych, like she swears like a sailor, which she was. She was on a Russian ship at some point, but and then she said, "I want to go to the people. I want to be famous. I'm here to show that we are Americas with the Ukrainians, and I'm the one representing all this." And bread, I'm gonna give out Torah bread and give it out. I was like, "You're not Jesus Christ. Come on." Like, you're Victoria Newland.
What did you tell her?
This is first. I told her you're not Jesus Christ.
And then,
And it's first of all, that's one thing. Second of all, it's pretty dirty out there. People on the streets. It's messy. It's winter time, and maybe something more like cookies or candy or like something more packed, sanitized version of what we can do. That's how the cookies idea came up. They had a bag with cookies. They bought whatever.
right, there's some famous footage of Victoria Newland handing out the cookies. So that was your idea.
Yes, that was my idea.
Now,
People-
during that time, of course, there was also that infamous phone call between the ambassador you mentioned, Jeffrey Pyatt, and Victoria Newland, who was the Obama administrator for these Ukraine issues and within the State Department. And they had that infamous call, which was leaked, where they discussed what was going to happen with Ukraine. And the important thing is that they had this discussion before the revolution. So they were kind of planning for it. And the people they named, Klitschko, you mentioned, was one of the people they named, but Newland wasn't very impressed with him. So they named some other people who then actually did become the leaders of Ukraine.
Yeah.
Did you know that this was going on in the background at the time?
Yes, we did know. I just came back a couple of years before that from the United States. I studied there. So I was like pro-Western. I believed in Western values. I believed in like the West can help Ukraine, not become some surrogate of the West, but become an ally, which we can deal with the West, United States, Russia on the same level. That's what we believe. That's what we were told, that Ukraine should be like this. So I was like, I want that to happen. I want people to respect their country. But unfortunately, it went the other way around. As I said, but that's we'll talk about that. But basically, at that time, we knew what was happening. I knew that Klitschko was one of the people that was supposed to be the president before the Maidan, and I knew people who were handling his lobbyism, his consulting, and he was put on as a leader. And they tried to test him. That's what the U.S. does. They test people. Klitschko, there was the singer from a band they tried to test after the Maidan to be one of the to replace Poroshenko, and that's how they test people like Zaluzhny, all these crowds who are being talked about today, and they see how the public reacts. So I know that Klitschko then was moved away, and during the Maidan there was a big question: who can lead that? Because Yatsenyuk was one of the people that was put on the prime minister, but he could not be the president because people did not vote for him. He's disliked physically, like as a person. And during the Maidan, it proved that people didn't like him. So that's how they were testing. So we knew that was happening in the background. We knew that they were pushing Yanukovych away because when we were meeting with Newland, and I said there was only Klitschko, Yatsenyuk, the leader of the neo-Nazis, Tehnebok, and me. And there was the U.S. Pyatt side, Newland, other people from the State Department. They had a buffet, which we didn't eat. We just talked because we were so tired. And that's it. So the meeting was pretty closed from the Ukrainian side, especially. I was there because I was arranging it from our side. So it was very interesting to see how they were pushing in Yanukovych, how Newland talked about. I called him until 4 a.m. He didn't pick up the phone. Who the hell he thinks he is? Doesn't pick up the phone for me. And I was like, my question at that time was like, yeah, good that they're helping, but who are you? You're like deputy head of State Department. You're like a deputy minister of foreign affairs to our standards. He's the president of a country. Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, you cannot talk about it that way. Even though we supported her because we wanted her, our side to win, because we understood if we didn't win, we are going to be imprisoned, or we had to flee Ukraine at that time. So that was the case for us, fighting for our lives or for the future of the country. And then if we would not go through, we would lose everything. But even though I thought now, I think we would have a better chance if we did not win that Maidan. Maybe people would be saved today, because there would be no war, no annexation of Crimea, no Donbass, no
Well,
Ukraine today, what we see, which is destructive. Because I said, I came back to Ukraine. I didn't want to stay abroad. I didn't want to live abroad, even though I had numerous chances to do that. I wanted to do something good for my country. I loved my country the way it was. In between, not hating Russia, in between Russia and Europe, using those benefits, like Turkey is, for example, one of examples. It's not a great example, but it's a good example. They're doing their good job in between Europe and the East. So that's what I thought Ukraine could be.
this is one of the things that was probably not well understood, and is still not well understood. The fact that Ukraine has always been this kind of buffer country. And so if you come in, and it doesn't matter how well intentioned you are, and you kind of destroy that equilibrium, you're going to cause a lot of problems. And that all started back in 2014.
It started back years ago, 2024, but the bloodshed started in 2014, where then it broke apart. I don't want to go into 2024. That's a different history.
Right.
But people wanted blood after 2024 because it didn't change anything.
Now,
It didn't change a lot. So that's where not people, I'm saying people in the government and the West wanted Ukraine to spill blood during a revolution, so then things cannot go backwards.
it was a rough time, but then was there any sense of positivity at some point when Yanukovych was gone?
No, it was a lot of trouble and turbulence, because right away after he fled, basically within a week, I got appointed as advisor to the first deputy, senior policy advisor to the first deputy prime minister of Ukraine, overseeing military, law enforcement, and intelligence of Ukraine. So that was our role, and I was the only senior policy advisor. And so even though he was supposed to have 5, I was doing that job for 5 people. And I was appointed that, and we were going through that process when the Crimea thing happened. The so-called Little Green Man came in. We were calling the U.S. Embassy, the State Department, and the Pentagon. We had meetings with Deputy Head of Secretary of Defense, who came to visit us in Kiev, and we told them, this is what's happening. Like, this is Russian troops. What can we do? And what you should do. They said, oh, give us proof. Like, what? They said, give us proof. We don't believe it's... So you have satellite imagery. We don't have it. We understand who those is. And we actually print out a huge, photograph of a machine gun, Kalashnikov 200, which Ukraine physically didn't have. It's only the Russian Federation who had it. This is example, but still, they needed Crimea to lure Russia into this. The United States wanted Russia to take away Crimea so they can lure in Russia into this conflict, so that people would hate Russia and Ukraine, so something was taken away from them. So that's why there was no blood during that period of time. Thank God. Nobody massively got killed during the annexation, but unfortunately that was a political strategy for the West to get Russia and to move this conflict furthermore into what we see the war today. Because it was very logical what happened during that time. Now it makes sense.
You then started working for Vitaly Yerma. Now, viewers who've been following this whole Ukraine story may recognize that name, because he was the prosecutor in charge of the General Prosecutor's Office in Kiev before it was taken over by this other guy, Shokin, who is, of course, the guy who was then later on fired by Joe Biden, and sort of that whole story. So you, apart from all these other things which we're going to talk about, also had a job inside the prosecutor's office.
Yes, after the cabinet ministers, I got a position as an advisor foreign policy. It was in the prosecutor's office to the general prosecutor of Ukraine, basically the attorney general of Ukraine, and then parallel head of protocol for his office. My job consisted of, because I don't have a law degree, but my job consisted of political advisement on connections and working with the United States government, European embassies, Canadian embassy, like all the international relations stuff, and plus some stuff on the cases that he was working on. So I saw the insights, how it all happened, unfolded from within.
So let me ask you straight up. We have a document from Hunter Biden's law firm, Boyce Schiller, discussing their strategy to shut down these investigations into Burisma, Hunter Biden's Ukrainian firm, dated 2014, which would overlap with your time there. Were they investigating Hunter Biden's firm at the time?
Yes, there were 7 volumes on my desk of his case on Burisma and on Zlochevsky and how he got his company, basically was illegally, gave himself licenses as Minister of Ecology and formed the largest gas companies. So won a big monopoly on the market while being the Minister of Ecology. So this is what we were investigating. So it was a crime what was happening. Then it led further on into investigations into Hunter Biden's role in the company and the protection he was using with the U.S. government, because nobody wanted to touch this company because of the U.S. government.
So these were active, ongoing investigations in the General Prosecutor's Office in Kiev, and you were there firsthand.
Yes, there were 7 volumes from what at that point I saw on the table in my desk. We were going through those one by one, how it all happened. There's a lot of stuff there which led to further investigations. And then from one investigation, Shokin had 4 investigations on his desk already with different tons of volumes of documents.
The person you were working for, Yerma, he retired or
he resigned.
He resigned.
He resigned in February 2015, and I continued to work with Shokin later on in the same position that I had with Yerma and working with the U.S. government, etc. So I continued to see what was going on, and I can tell you that the guy was investigating. He wanted to investigate this because for him it was how the U.S. is telling us and teaching Ukraine we have to fight corruption so badly that we're throwing away prosecutors, firing half of the prosecutorial office of Ukraine, 12,000 prosecutors. But at the same time, they're protecting, not everybody, but most of the government is basically in the U.S. Embassy and State Department, and everybody else is protecting this company called Burisma because Hunter Biden is on the board of it, and we have to, something's going on. We have to go with this, and we have to investigate. That's what Shokin's position is. I remember that for why I respect him, because he wanted to do this professionally, not just politically. He said, "I'll go down to the bottom of this," and we did. He actually did. There was not just a Burisma case. There was a case on money laundering for Hunter Biden through Latvian banks, through then giving cash money to him, because there was not just the money was given through him. Through the banking system, there was Vadim Požarsky was giving him cash while he was traveling to Europe or different parts of the world, parallel to the money he was receiving officially, which was not also official money was laundered. So everything was going through that investigation, and Shokin understood he cannot get Hunter Biden. He didn't want to put Biden to prison or anybody else. He couldn't. He wanted the United States to handle it because it's their citizen. He wanted to give those documents to the United States government because everybody believed the U.S. is teaching us to fight corruption, that they can do it. There's freedom and democracy and justice in America, so why not do it? And that's what we believed. That's why we were investigating this, and we believed that doing this Hunter Biden story investigation would lead to give it to the United States and let them handle this.
We'll come back to that in a moment, because in a sense, we're covering it now because you were working in that office during that time. But then, of course, a lot of other things happened in between. And then in 2020, you returned straight to this issue, which we'll come back to. But what happened before that, of course, is you were then appointed as a diplomat to the U.S. Embassy in Washington.
Yes.
So this was also in 2015.
Yes, I resigned from my position in the prosecutor's office, and because I was offered a job as a member to work as a member of Charlie's team, Master Charlie, who was deputy head of the office of the president at that time. He offered me that. He said, "I'm going to be the ambassador to Washington. I know that I have good contacts in Washington, D.C. I want you to be one of the guys on my team."
Right. Charlie, of course, people have heard of, the ambassador, the Ukrainian long-time ambassador in Washington, D.C., Ukrainian ambassador, who penned an infamous op-ed during the 2016 presidential race, essentially arguing against Donald Trump. And a lot of the people that you worked with at the time at the U.S. Embassy, at the Ukrainian Embassy in Washington, were doing similar things. And I want to talk a bit more about that, because this all culminated in a story in Politico, which just happens to be also on January 11th, the day when your world collapsed, but only 4 years earlier. So 2017, January 11th, is when the Politico story ran. That's the first time that I came across your name. We hadn't met, we hadn't talked. It was just, there was this guy, and I thought, wow, this is a brave guy, because he's in the U.S. in the embassy, in the Ukrainian embassy in Washington D.C. And well, he said what happened, and what you said in that article was that there was interference from the Ukrainian side in order to help Hillary Clinton. How did that all come about?
Yeah, I came to work at the embassy in December 2015, official my appointment, and arrived in Washington. And basically, it started from January meeting in 2016 with Ukrainian prosecutors coming to Washington to meet with the Department of Justice, FBI officials, and the White House officials. And Charlie asked me to be with them to oversee that delegation, because usually somebody comes from abroad, the embassy there.
So you were essentially the chaperone of the Ukrainian visitors.
Yeah, I had to basically be with them and report back on what's happening, and the U.S. side knew that. That's why they didn't want the embassy to be involved, so they actually blocked us from coming there, because I knew, because Holodnitsky was there, the special anti-corruption prosecutor, Lidze, and Sitnik, the head of NABU. I knew all those guys because they worked under me during this period of time when I worked in the prosecutor's office. So I called them and said, look, what's going on? We're being blocked. No, we want you there. The U.S. side just told us not to basically inform you, but we did. So I pick up my contacts. I know that a person called Liz Zentos, which I coordinated with during the Maidan in 2014 in Ukraine. She was one of the people from the U.S. Embassy at the time who worked on that stuff. So I emailed her and said, we have a delegation coming. I want to be part of it. Late notice, sorry, but can you make it happen? And
so initially they did not, they being the U.S. side,
Department of Justice and FBI, basically.
They had invited Ukrainian prosecutors minus the prosecutor general Shokin, so
Yes.
he was not invited,
No.
but his underlings were invited, and the U.S. side wanted to keep this quiet, or at least not to get the Ukrainian embassy involved in that
Yes,
process.
no, but nobody from the outside to be involved and to oversee and hear what's going to happen.
Right, but because you knew some of the people involved, you were able to sit in on at least one of these meetings.
A couple of meetings. Basically, the White House gave me access. Liz Zentos was working as an advisor to Biden's team during the National Security Council. She, through Eric Chaminella, her boss, granted access to me to be part of that meeting because they thought I was their guy. Like, I was nobody's guy. I was just friendly with everybody. And then they granted me a couple more meetings, pushed to be part of some meetings with the FBI, neutral stuff. But the big stuff, they moved within the FBI and Department of Justice. I was moved aside, but the delegation, then the prosecutors told me what happened. So the first thing, the January meeting in the White House. End of January, the prosecutors sit in. That's when the Ukrainian interference, basically, I started to understand something's going on. Because during that meeting, they wanted to, first of all, they were pushing to get Chokin out by saying that he's bad, basically putting words in the prosecutor's mouths from the U.S. side, the FBI. They were basically representing Ukraine. They were not the prosecutors. They were quiet most of the time. These guys were talking. Then Chokin is bad, we have to fire him, etc. Then there was a talk about giving Ukraine prosecutors not materials, but devices to overtap the phones, which were even protected, of the president, of Shokin, and everybody around, so they can pressure the Poroshenko if needed to fire Shokin, so that process can go through the NABU, even though they didn't have legal possibilities at the time. The U.S. wanted to basically interfere in that and push this narrative further on a political level. This was the discussions in the White House. And then the Manafort stuff mentioned.
Paul Manafort.
Yes, Paul Manafort, the famous political consultant who...
soon after became Trump's... it was convention manager first, and then the campaign manager.
And his mentioning was, and Paul Manafort actually mentions the story in his book.
So what happened at that meeting in relation to Paul Manafort? What did they tell you?
They didn't tell me. They told the prosecutors, you should look into American consultants who worked for the former Yanukovych government. And everybody knew. It was Paul Manafort who worked with Yanukovych. There was nobody else, and everybody knew about it. It was all in the news. It's not like some wink, wink, we don't know who that is. It's like, wink, wink, oh, we know what you're talking about. Look into his finances. Maybe we can find something there. And then, moving forward, the Black Ledger comes up, Telizhenko and all that stuff later, a couple of months later. But then I started to understand something's wrong here. So I reported this back to the embassy. Charlie basically says, we have to work with the Americans on this. Then they introduced me to this one called Chalupa.
Alexander Chalupa.
Yeah, Oksana Shudar, Charlie's aide, and Charlie basically says you have to co-meet with this woman. She's a prominent DNC consultant, Ukraine heritage, and so we met outside of the embassy. There's a cafe right 50 meters from the embassy. We sat there and had a talk, and she directly asked me. So this is a period of time, a couple of months happening, and these all events are unfolding right during the election process. And me working in the embassy, overseeing the elections, are being basically dragged into this by the ambassador, by the U.S. officials, and now the DNC, which tells me during this meeting I have to find dirt on presidential candidate Donald Trump. Anything. Or on his team, anything connected to Russia. And I said, why are you talking to me? Well, because you oversaw your work during your work in Ukraine, you oversaw law enforcement, intelligence, maybe you have contacts there that can dig something out because we know that something's there. Or whatever you can do and legalize, give it to us and we can take Trump off the ballot through Marcy Kepter.
Ambassador Charlie told you to meet Alexander Chalupa.
Charlie and Shudar.
And that's Oksana Shulyar. She was like his deputy, right?
She's the DCM at the embassy, his first deputy at the embassy, overseeing political...
So the two head people there at the Ukrainian embassy told you, there's this lady we'd like you to meet, and we want you to help her with her requests.
Assist her in anything possible, what she asks for.
And this was Alexander Chalupa.
Yes, this was Alexander Chalupa.
And
we met in March of 2016, and she's asking for dirt from a Ukrainian government official, knowing who I am, to give to the DNC, which she then says I'm going to use to try to take Trump off the ballot through Marcy Kepter, or other stuff we can use it for. For that was basically her language, words, and what she told me. So, and then I come back to Charlie. I said, "This is what is this happening? What is this all about?" He says, "No, you should work with her. I'm telling you, you should work with her. What we tell you should do." And so this was a lot of red flags for me already. Something is weird happening. I don't want to be part of this. It's illegal. I tell this to Charlie, this is illegal. First of all, can you imagine the reputation costs if this comes out? And it did come out, not from me. It came out long before it came from me in the political article. People knew about this in Washington. But it's going to have, if we're going to lose, what do you think is going to happen? No, we're not going to lose. Trump is never going to win. And I remember talking later on even to Liz Zentos, meeting her with Eric Shermanella in cafes and discussing discussing Shokin, that kind of stuff. I said, Trump is never going to win. We're going to have, Hillary's going to come. The guy hates women, etc. He's not going to become president. So this is what, they actually hated him. They hated Trump. I remember Shermanella, Liz Zentos, they hated him. Chalupa hated. They're genuinely, not politically hatred, those rivalry. No, this is pure non-supportiveness. So this is what I witnessed, and then I was told by Shudar and Charlie to when Trump's team was brought up online, and the names of the people who's going to work and everything else, work on Michael Flynn, George Papadopoulos, and Carter Page to find and basically do a dossier on them for the embassy, and then to give to Shudar also, which basically then those names were the first ones who were investigated and went after by the U.S. law enforcement illegally. So this is also, I later on saw the developments. At that time, I didn't.
So those names had been announced as part of Trump's foreign policy team.
There was a huge list, but there was three of
them. So
them.
they picked out these guys, and they asked you to dig around.
Yes, dig around through my sources in the U.S., through my sources in Ukraine, what I can find, because they had connections to Russia, and we have to use them to basically undermine the President Trump's team at that time. So at one point where I'm witnessing the White House asking on Paul Manafort, the future Trump's campaign manager, which at that time nobody knew that he's going to be one, officially or publicly. And that's one thing. Second part, Chalupa, the DNC's asking to dig out dirt on presidential candidate Donald Trump and people around him, without naming other names, but just Trump directly. And then I get an order from Shudar to have a dossier on those three names, Michael Flynn, George Papadopoulos, and Carter Page. And later on find out that Shudar she had good connections with the Democratic Party, because I was working with the Republicans teams, and she was working with Democrats, because she was eventually sleeping, what she told like me, with the guy from DNC, from the Democratic Hillary's team, renting an apartment from him. So basically collusion over there already, and she knew the insights, what they wanted. So they were working very deeply. And this was not official, just personally their ambitions. It was the Ukrainians' position, because Charlie would directly say on meetings, Poroshenko and the Ukrainian government is backing up Hillary Clinton. We don't want Trump to win. If he wins, Ukraine's going to lose, because there was an unfolding war, civil war in Donbass. We need support to push that war forward, and because of Trump, we won't be able to do that. So that was basically an agenda, not just personally because Charlie wanted or Shudar wanted or somebody else wanted. No, it was an official position by the Ukrainian government to move this thing forward and destroy basically one candidate and support the other candidate.
Of course, this all led to Paul Manafort being fired as campaign manager, because there was this alleged ledger that came out, which, again, there's very disputed views on its veracity. I've read fairly detailed studies that show that this was not a real ledger. But be that as it may, it came out of Ukraine. And we know, of course, from some leaked phone calls that Joe Biden and the then Ukrainian President Poroshenko were laughing about it in a phone call. And Poroshenko essentially took credit for getting rid of Manafort, and while Biden seemed to find that quite funny. So we know that this was going on at the same time that it happened, that these two guys were aware of it and talking about it and laughing about it. Unfortunately for the people who pushed this, it didn't derail Trump. Maybe it even helped him, because you had Kellyanne Conway come in and really kind of probably like streamline the campaign, sort of get it on a very narrow track. There's many other things that happened during that period. We all remember the Access Hollywood tapes and so on. So many things that were supposed to derail Trump, and he did not get derailed. So then comes November 8th, 2016, and Trump pulls off this miraculous victory. What's going on inside the Ukrainian embassy? What's going on with the people you mentioned?
I was in Ukraine at the time, and I remember that the government in Ukraine was in shock. They didn't know what to do. I remember I was working with people close to Poroshenko at the time, and they said, this is a disaster for Ukraine. We're going to lose. This is nothing good is going to happen. And I remember talking to different people, and they knew, and even in Washington, that the Ukraine collusion happened. The ambassador, Chely and Shudar and people around were working on the other side. And this was November 2016, and this is people in Washington telling me this, and I was like, yeah, I know that happened. So I was trying to push this agenda through Vitaly Yerema to give to Poroshenko, because he was working with him at that time, very closely meeting with him, that something has to be done with the embassy. Just renew the leadership at the embassy, make things change, and then we're going to have a good relationship. Everybody understands politics, people play games, right? Somebody wins, somebody loses. So just go with the leadership, everything's going to change. And no, then Poroshenko kept Charlie, and then even Zelensky kept Charlie until 2020, basically to become, or until 2019 to be ambassador there. So this was like they didn't want to do it, just for principle that they didn't want to budge. So that's when I was approached. I didn't want to go public. I was approached to go public and say, do you want to go public and say what happened? I said, I thought about it, consult my wife, and said, yes, I'll do it. It's the right thing to do because...
Was this through the media or through some middle person?
A U.S. citizen.
So a U.S. citizen asked you whether you...
Who was connected to U.S. media, yes.
Whether you would talk to someone in the U.S. media about Ukraine's role in the 2016 election.
Yes.
And you ultimately agreed you'd do it. Now, this is the article I mentioned earlier, and the January 11th, 2017 Politico article. And I remember at the time I thought it was earth-shattering because they weren't trying to hide anything. It was all there, the headline, the whole article. And then, as I mentioned, you were... I thought you were very brave, but it said your name. And it said your name again and again. And we all know in most of these circumstances, people will not allow the media to print their name. They'll just be an anonymous source. What made you decide, no, it's okay, I'm going to have my name on this?
The truth. Because it was the truth. I had nothing to hide. I didn't make up stories. I remember the Politico was working, the journalist, Ken Vogel, one of the journalists based in the U.S., and there was another one working in Ukraine. They were talking to me for a couple of weeks on this article. So it wasn't a one-day article. It was like 3 or 4 weeks working, going back and forth, checking information, getting information out. And so it was a long period of time, and I agreed upon to give my name because it was the truth. I had nothing to hide. It was what I was backing up with my name, that this is what was happening. I personally saw it, I personally witnessed. I thought it might help for the change. I didn't want to get anything out of it, like no money, nothing. I thought this is going to help change things, and people are going to see in the leadership in Ukraine that things are going to change in the embassy, and that's it. There's a name behind this. Somebody who saw it. People know me. In the Poroshenko's team, people knew who I was. So why not?
Well, it certainly makes it a lot more credible. Now, this was very important at the time. I think it was flushed out pretty quickly because everything to do with Russia kind of took over. But I thought it was very important at the time because you had this Russia collusion and Russian interference and all these narratives. And in the middle of that, there's this article saying, well, actually, no, it was Ukraine. Now, it could have been both. That's entirely possible. But that part is never talked about. And there you were.
I talk only what I personally witnessed. I cannot comment on what happened in other ways. I don't comment on stuff that I personally witnessed, or I can confirm that it happened from different sources. So in that period of time, that's what I witnessed. That's what I spoke about. And that's what I wanted to deliver that message out.
Well, I think it gave you a lot of credibility, especially among sort of in the Trump administration, among people who were affected by this Russia investigation and so on, because, well, they could see, no matter what else is going on, here's a guy who's willing to put his name forward and on paper, attesting as to what was going on, Manafort, these other things you mentioned, Chalupa, DNC, Ledger, Shali, and so on and so forth. Now, after that, of course, everything was kind of shifted to Russia. And we had Mueller and all these kinds of things. What were you doing during those years, 2017, 18, and so on?
After I came back from the embassy in 16, I got an offered job to work at Blue Star Strategies. lobby firm, basically lobbying for Hunter Biden Burisma. And how I got the job, I met with them while working at the embassy. Charlie couldn't attend the meeting, so I was told to attend it, and they found out that I was working in the prosecutor's office, and they asked me to help with the meeting with after Shokin got fired, with a meeting with the incumbent prosecutor and then Prosecutor General Lutsenko. So I organized those meetings for them. They loved it. It was private held. They had private access to the leadership of the prosecutor's office. So I did that for them, just to the good contacts. Like that, I thought it would be good for the future just to have people like that in contact from Washington. That was my focus. Ukraine, United States. I grew up in the West. I wanted to build a relationship. So that's how I got a job there. And
let's just zoom out here for a moment. So Blue Star Strategies, of course, is the Democrat-aligned lobbying group.
Not just aligned, they're embezzled.
Well, you got Karen Tramontano and Sally Painter, all Democrat stalwarts. I think Tramontano was Deputy Chief of Staff.
And then Chief of Staff when he was, after his impeachment, when he was moving out of the office.
So very tied in with Democrats. So lobbyist firm, that's very typical for DC. And there's nothing wrong with going to work for these people. That said, people watching this may ask, you knew about the Hunter Biden investigation when you were in the prosecutor's office. You, of course, knew about the interference. You were being asked to find materials on Manafort and so on and so forth. How does that fit with then going to work for Blue Star?
Their role was for me to oversee the work in Ukraine and Burisma, and to work with the prosecutor's office on informing how the case is going. Regular lobbying work, what everybody in the U.S. does after they leave a government position job. I thought I was thrilled that it was a Democratic Party. Like, I didn't care. For me, Republicans, Democrats were and are the same basically. But so I thought, working for a U.S. firm after leaving the embassy, it's a good thing. Overall, just a U.S. firm working there, getting a good job. Maybe I can move on forward from there and get some contacts in D.C. and then get a job. That was my only ambition. I didn't think about Hunter Biden. I knew that it was bad, but I also needed a job. I cannot be always thinking about the good stuff. I just resigned because of my personal dignity and personal thoughts that everything that Ukraine was doing is illegal. But I cannot just stay afloat on good things.
Right, but I think this is important for people to realize that this was a normal job. This wasn't just Hunter Biden.
No, it was
there were 100 different things going on.
It was overall Ukraine, the Eastern Europe, overseeing their work there, consulting them, getting their schedules ready. I was not interfering in an investigation or giving money. I would not support any of that job. I had to inform about how the case was going, pick up a phone, call the contacts in the prosecutor's office, what's going on, when the case is, how it's going to move forward, and then if something bad is going to happen, inform Blue Star, and then they can have the lawyers come in, that kind of stuff, like regular consulting work, which is legal, nothing illegal happening there. So I did that, and I did that for a year working with them, and I resigned after a year because of the article in Politico, because they were not happy, Karen Tramontano and Sally Painter, that the article came out that I went out and said publicly that Ukraine wanted to work with the Democrats, which was true, and they actually didn't want to pay me and wanted to fire me earlier, but because I had a contract that kept me on until basically the whole year, and I worked for them. So I oversaw how they were working in Ukraine, how they were trying to push to close the contract, how they were trying to lobby and get the prosecutor general to help them close the case. That was their job. So, but sure. I knew everything what they were doing. Parallel to that, I had all their schedules, how they were pushing the U.S. Embassy in Kiev a couple of weeks before the case closed. Or a week before the case closed, how they met with Yovanovitch and had that they were pushing to the U.S. Embassy to close the case and have the U.S. government back up this whole process of Hunter Biden, and how they got on board working for Burisma as PR mostly, but they were doing damage and crisis management control on a political level, reporting back through Amos Hochstein to Hunter Biden on how things are happening on his son with his work in Ukraine. So that was their main role, being the back channel and being the babysitter for Hunter Biden. And as I said, I didn't do anything illegal working for that lobby firm. I did consulting, how everybody in Washington does it. And abroad, I thought, yeah, this is not the most ethical thing, but it is in the boundaries of legal and doesn't cross any laws that there is. But I defend my family. So that's how my political consulting work started, working for this lobby firm. Then it grew to my private consulting with different other politicians, businessmen in Ukraine and abroad.
Right. So the Blue Star kind of morphed into your own venture in Ukraine.
Yes.
And you worked for a number of politicians, other people in Ukraine. And I suppose just quite happy 2018, 19, that period.
Yeah, I was overall, it was a good period. I was doing a lot of private stuff, working with U.S.-Ukraine relationship. And I was happy about how my job, I had contracts, I was getting paid well. I was happy that I was making money with my own brain, basically, my mind, not just stealing money from the government or from the people. And that's why they have nothing on me. I never stole anything because I also thought about on the sanctions that if they would have something on me, I would have never gone that far. And if they would have had something on me, they would incriminate me with a criminal case, not just political sanctions. So at the same time,
well, as we mentioned at the outset, this is an administrative punishment. This is just one guy's signature. There's no courtroom involved. There's no judge involved. There's no evidence involved. There's nothing of the sort. Now, of course, your life changed a second time in 2019 when the impeachment happened. Now, of course, there was a phone call between President Trump and President Zelensky, July 25th, 2019. That phone call was then reported by a so-called whistleblower whom you had met, whom we've mentioned before, Eric Ciaramella. So when was the first time that you heard about this phone call? Not necessarily in a bad way, just that it had taken place. Because again, you were in Kiev, you were a political consultant, you were in the know with all these people. When was the first time you heard about that?
First of all, in 2019, Rudy Giuliani wanted to meet with me and was looking to contact me one way or another. So,
as a consequence of the phone call?
Before the phone call, as a consequences of the Ukrainian interference in the U.S. elections. That was the main focus of what they wanted to meet with me and talk to me about. And so in May of 2019, before the phone call, I met with Rudy Giuliani. Through DJ, I was in their house, and I was in Washington. I was introduced to them, saying, "Rudy's looking for me, and there's this team that wants to meet with you." I met with them, and then they called Rudy, and I came to New York, and that's how we got introduced. There was this famous photo online where Washington Post published that Telizhenko met with Rudy Giuliani. Oh, the evils come together, whatever. It was nonsense in the legacy media. And so I helped him get some facts straight from my personal evidence. And he asked me if I can help him on some stuff in Ukraine for him to really understand what is happening. So when the phone call happened, I believe I was in the States. I was with Rudy in that period of time in the summer also. And I knew that happened, that Trump called Zelensky, and that I knew that what the phone call was almost about. Not details, but overall that things can move forward now because Rudy was looking into not just Ukraine interference, but also Hunter Biden corruption, because of Shokin. Shokin was giving that information out in the public that he investigated this, and the famous Biden speech, how he fired Shokin, SOB, whatever, that was that language. So everybody knew what was happening at that time.
Right. I think this is very important to realize in terms of how did Giuliani suddenly get involved and so on. In 2018, Joe Biden, who was out of office at the time, went to the Council on Foreign Relations. We all have seen that infamous video, and bragged about leveraging U.S. taxpayer loans or loan guarantees for getting the prosecutor fired. The prosecutor who was investigating his son and, as you said earlier, his son's firm. So, of
And
course, you'd be a very important witness to that. So, if someone was going to look into this, someone saw this video, someone wanted to know more about this, you'd be the perfect person to contact at the time.
because we knew, I witnessed, we said before, the January meeting in the White House, how they're talking about, not just Paul Manafort, but about going after Shokin. So,
But in the phone call, it was
yeah,
agreed, or at least President Trump suggested, that there should be an investigation
we,
of that particular incident, which again, we can all agree or disagree about many different things. But Joe Biden in 2018 went on the record and said that he had gotten this prosecutor fired and that he had leveraged US taxpayer money to do that. Now, no, whatever one thinks about anything else, that is certainly something worth kind of looking into. And so on the phone call, from the transcript that we've all seen, it seems like President Zelensky agreed to do that.
from what I was told and what we then heard, yes, I remember talking to Rudy and then said things can move forward because the prosecutor's office in Ukraine is going to provide evidence because there's a new sheriff in town, new president in Ukraine, Zelensky, is going to provide evidence to the United States on this stuff, to the FBI, to the Department of Justice, not to Rudy Giuliani, not to Telizhenko, not to any private prosecutor's office, to the Department of Justice of the United States, both kind of counterparts in their work, all official. That then the United States can then, having the evidence that the Ukrainian prosecutor's office digged up, investigated, look into that, and from their side having a better possibility in looking into financials and money laundering, which the United States does greatly, look into that and then investigate, was there corruption or was there something to look into with the authorities? That was the main goal of the phone call. No political mess. So it was a great phone call from Trump's words, and not just Trump's, everybody, to have two agencies work together. So I remember that, and Rudy said, "Oh, we were happy that this is moving forward. It's on an official level. I was happy that it's being taken seriously, not just some people like me running around trying to move that message forward or being asked to move this message. It's how it happened, asked about it all the time. It's going to be investigated officially. Done. Boom. It should be end of problem. Things are moving forward there." No, but then the things moved backwards. It all got leaked in a bad way, in a derogatory way by this Shermanella and all these other people. And then I remember a phone call that I was part of with Rudy sitting in Yermak, end of August, saying, "Oh, we will not be able to give you anything.
So
We will not go back with our promise." He was still, I believe he was not the acting head of presidential office at that time, but he was basically already taking control of the presidential office of Zelensky at that time.
So he's the guy who this year was arrested for corruption.
Yes, and went on bail on $4.5 million.
And back then, he was essentially running Zelensky's office, as he was for many years.
Not officially yet, there was another guy running, but he was already moving into that position, being a close friend of Zelensky, and he was already taking control through foreign relationships.
So Yermak was liaising with Rudy Giuliani.
Yes, he was.
And then at some point in August of 2019, he said, "Sorry, we're not going to give you any of this stuff."
Oh yeah, I witnessed that phone call. I remember I was sitting in Rudy Giuliani's office and he put it on speaker and him talking to Yermak, he said, "You guys promised to the President of the United States you're going to provide evidence officially through official channels. What is happening? Like, I don't need that evidence. You should give it to the official channels." And this was already, the phone call was already being leaked, but Yermak said, "Oh, we're backing out. We're not going to do it." So basically, Ukraine screwed over Trump the second time already. And this is just the beginning. There's going to be more.
And so then, of course, the impeachment went forward when we know at a minimum that no matter what one may find, there was at least a good reason to look. And Joe Biden brought that reason about by himself, by admitting that he had essentially extorted the Ukrainian president. I mean, that's on tape. So that, of course, is the core of the impeachment, that Trump wanted that investigated, and then he was impeached for wanting that investigated. That, of course, played out over many weeks and months, A lot of these people you've mentioned already, some others we have not mentioned, testified, and there was a lot of back and forth and so on towards the end of 2019, early 2020. What was your involvement at the time? Were you asked to testify?
No, I was asked during the impeachment about me. I was numerous times to Fiona Hill, to Vindman, and others, all those liberal crowd, which I never met most of them. They all knew me one way or another somehow, saying that I was a Russian agent, because the impeachment Senate committee, they were looking into this, who was involved and who could you trust, who can they question. And they were questioning, I said, Vindman and Fiona Hill and others, and they were all saying, "No, Telizhenko is a Russian agent." Even at that time, I was like, there was no even clue about that. I didn't even. That was only after sanction that I understood where it was going to. But at that time, I was like, "How am I a Russian agent? Like, I'm working clearly for the interests of my country." So it was. That's how I was part of it, and not directly, but through people talking about me officially. And then I was also talking to the FBI parallel at the time about all that stuff that happened. And
Let me stop you there. Who initiated the contact with the FBI?
there was also a third party U.S. citizen who connected me to the FBI. They said they would be interested to talk to you. So,
And were they investigating the broader question to do with Biden extorting the Ukrainian president, or was it more Hunter Biden specifically? Or
everything from Hunter Biden to Trump, Giuliani, Ukraine, Blue Star at one point, then they started asking on Hunter Biden direction. So I was talking to the FBI. It was not just one meeting. The first meeting we had was like 8 hours or something in a hotel room. And they were checking back and forth my information. They had some people in another room sitting, then coming in, out.
Surely, if you had ever said anything that wasn't true, you'd have been charged. Like
That's what
so
I was
many
told,
others.
yes. I was told directly, I said, if I lie, even though this is unofficial, it's not like I'm subpoenaed or taken in for questioning, I will be in big trouble. I will be arrested or something. I don't know. That's
Well,
what
we remember during that time, it seems like everyone was being charged under 18 USC 1001, which is telling a lie in a government function, so, for instance, to the FBI. So a lot of Trump advisors ended up in jail or at least got charged with that. So no, I think that's an important point to note, that you spent so many hours talking to these people, and nothing like that ever happened.
No.
But did anything good ever come of it? Did you ever see anything coming out of the FBI that was basically kicked off by the information that you provided?
I know that I believe that the agents that were talking to me did want that to happen. It was the Counterintelligence Office of New York that was talking to me. I know that they did. A couple of those agents who were actually very interested. They were like, they knew everything that was happening, like spot on. And they were like going back and forth with questions. So it was interesting to talk to them. I met with them like 5 times, and minimum for 5 hours. Most of them was 8-9 hours meetings, talking, just sitting in a chair like we are sitting right now, discussing things. They were asking me questions, and at one point they did want me to meet with some high-level officials from Washington. That's when they were cut off. And that's when I was talking about Hunter Biden, and they cut me off from they cut the agents off from talking to me.
So it's
That's what I was told.
the usual story where we've heard so many times over the past.
So nothing happened.
10
They
years.
didn't use anything that I provided. I don't know if they did, but from what I understand, nothing ever came out of good for it. They offered me to be their informant at one point, which I denied, but officially they didn't use any of that information.
So nothing you ever told them had any impact on the impeachment.
I don't know how.
Not publicly,
Not
not that you
publicly.
knew
From
of
what
or
I
anything like
from
that.
what I was told, no. And they were cut off from talking to me at one point because it was too much for them, from those agents from what the top told them to handle. So it was about their pay grade.
Well, we'll get to one of those agents here in a moment, because then we're kind of moving now into your third kind of area that you were able to provide firsthand information on, which is, of course, the Senate investigation. So we're now moving from impeachment to the Senate investigation of Hunter Biden and his dealings. So now we moved into 2020.
And if just adding to the impeachment, Also parallel to that, I met with Devin Nunes and 8 more other congressmen in a private setting in one of a lobbyists, one prominent lobbyist's house outside D.C. And we had dinner, and then they came out and started questioning me about that stuff. Basically, it was agreed upon that they're going to be questioning me. They wanted to meet with me. Also, I didn't want to meet with them. It was fun to meet with congressmen. But remember, Devin Nunes and 8 other Republican congressmen were sitting there and questioning me about during the impeachment process, the Ukraine interference, what was happening, how and where, the Cherminal stuff, all that kind of issues. I was questioned by them, and so that happened also. So Devin Nunes, and it was actually written about. I think the Daily Beast or somebody mentioned that also.
Now,
and then there's the Senate stuff that's separate.
Right. So what it sort of tells us, I suppose, is that you were there when a lot of these things happened and you had a first-hand look. So, for instance, going back to the beginning of our conversation, you said that you were there in the general prosecutor's office. You can attest firsthand that, yes, both Burisma and Hunter Biden were, in fact, being investigated.
Yeah, there were 4 cases open before they got closed. 4, not just 1, not 2, not 3. 4 criminal cases in different matters that were investigating Burisma, Hunter Biden, their involvement. So that was just to point out. It was not just, we're going to open a case and then we're going to close it. No, 4 criminal cases.
And so there's a first-hand witness. You met these congressmen. You met the FBI. You told anyone who wanted to know from you, truthfully, what was going on, which should have really derailed the impeachment right then and there, because, once again, at its core, President Trump asked for these matters to be investigated because, of course, the prosecutor who was doing this was then fired by Joe Biden, the father. Now, again, we can all say it's a big coincidence or whatever else is going on. Anything's possible. But there is, just on the basis of that, obviously, a reason to look into it. And that was the cause or the core of the impeachment. And here you were there as a first-hand witness to say, yes, that is in fact what was the case. And strangely, we never really heard about it at the time. Meaning even the people you spoke to didn't really come forward and say, we've got to... I suppose you know this better than I do. How much of it did come out during that time, so 2019, 2029?
I was shocked it didn't come out a lot. I was shocked that it was basically not of the stuff that I was trying. They were asking me for all this information, and they were...
but then nothing happened.
Nothing happened. Never used, never called out to testify, never called out to publicly to do anything, which I was ready to. Not because I wanted to, but I wanted to get this over with. And get over with and say, just, it's done.
Well, let's just picture this. You mentioned Fiona Hill, and
those people got involved one way.
All these people who testified, and we all remember the images and so on. Why wasn't Andrii Telizhenko one of those people?
Because I was not part of the cabal, liberal cabal that was doing this to derail Trump. I was, on the other hand, to help him and tell the truth. They were the ones who didn't witness anything or didn't have first-hand knowledge. That's why they were there. Like, from one of the people the only ones who testified, George Kent, who was the former deputy head of the embassy in Kiev, and then deputy head of State Department, he said about me, Telizhenko's a liar, I don't like him, but he's not a Russian agent. So that's the only thing I can actually go back to. And those people were testifying the truth. He was the one actually saying that there was corruption in Burisma and the U.S. Embassy was trying to back it up. And he actually was the one who actually saw stuff. Fiona Hill, Vindman, I don't know why they were there. Why wasn't Telizhenko there? Why wasn't somebody else who saw things who was not there?
It might sound like such a trite point. Well, obviously because it was a Democrat effort or whatever, but just on the basis of who these people were, many of them were part of the Trump administration.
Unfortunately, yes.
Volker, Fiona Hill, the ambassador, Sondland, the guy.
Yeah.
There were plenty of people there from within the Trump administration. So
who hated Trump. They hated him. I know some of these people, like, they hate him. Like, if you're on a hill working Brookings, Ambassador Pfeiffer, they physically, they don't like him not just as a politician, as a person. They despise what he was doing for America because they think he's evil. That's how these people are. I know I was on that side,
Right.
seeing them. So unfortunately, I can tell that it's
But
not
this is why your story is so important, because while it's being presented as a fair group of people was asked to come forward, people from within the Trump administration, and tell the story, and it all resulted in impeachment. Well, we've just highlighted that probably the most important person was not invited. You.
Unfortunately, yes. I don't know why. Maybe it's God's path so this can be
Well, they
right
didn't.
now told now, because it was then told then, it would maybe have ended then. But now it's still continuing, and we understand that they didn't stop. So, like, it's a philosophical approach to this, but this is what it is. So, unfortunately, I was shocked at how the system of the United States worked, how the so-called freedom, justice, and democracy, which it doesn't have. Like, the United States doesn't have democracy. Like, this is obvious right now for me. I'm going through this whole path, believing in the United States in 2014, 13. There's freedom, and people are going to work about ending now that understand what the United States is about, the deep state, the evil from within going about, and they don't care about the people, the president, or whoever else. They care about themselves and being in power. Telizhenko, of course, some Ukrainian guy, who he is, who the hell he thinks he is, coming to America telling us what to do. That's how they see me. That's why I was not there, from what I personally can understand.
I will push back on that in one sense, which is that President Trump did get reelected,
Yes, he did.
and against all odds.
But with such hard effort after the after 2020.
At least something still works if you're talking about democracy in the sense of that's what the people wanted, and despite everything that was thrown at him, there he is, and he came back.
But that's the people.
Right.
Majority. Everybody, everything, when you get together, it counts. The majority getting together, going out there so they couldn't lie and falsify how they did in 2020. It got too much that it cannot go against the people. So that's why it happened. And that's why they need to cherish that the people are backed Trump in 2024, and the administration needs to do everything that people actually wanted him to do. So I believe that's the core of democracy, but at the same time, it had to get the people so mad for what happened that people from Democrats, Independents, Republicans getting together and backing Trump to get reelected because it was so bad going forward where America and the world was getting to, at the verge of World War III, where we were just a couple of years ago.
Let me move back to that transition from impeachment to the Hunter Biden investigation, which is sort of the third big area where you were able to offer firsthand information, firsthand evidence. You were in many of these rooms when things were being said, things were taking place, not just the prosecutor's office. We already talked about Sierra Mella, that meeting, the Ukrainian embassy.
Yeah, going back and forth with Shamel a couple of times. We had coffee privately outside the White House, and Liz Entis, and they were pushing stuff on Shokin and against Trump, and stuff. So that was the whole there's the whole story there. So.
How did you get pulled into the Senate's Hunter Biden investigation in 2020?
I had lunch with a prominent U.S. journalist, and he said, "Do you want to talk to the United States Senate? Because they want to talk to you." This was in Washington D.C., July 2019. So I said, "Yes, why not? That's why I'm here. I want to help." And the next day, I come back. I said, "I'm going to get their phone number to you." I said, "Okay, sure." And then the chief of staff of Senator Johnson that evening calls me and says, we want to meet with you tomorrow?" So I did not go and ask for those meetings for Politico, for FBI, for Nevin Nunes, for Senator Johnson. They all were looking for me, and Rudy Giuliani also. They were looking to contact me one way or another. And so I agreed to do that meeting, and the next day I went to the U.S. Senate met with Senator Johnson's team. And there's people from Senator Grassley's team also, and Senator Johnson himself. We spoke for several hours, 5 hours, I believe. Then we had a photo with Johnson, which also came out, and then the liberal legacy on the media said, "Oh, Telizhenko's meeting with Senator Johnson. Johnson went to Moscow a couple of years before. There's the connection. The KGB is there and the Senate." So it's that kind of nonsense that was in the media at that time, and still is. And so that's when we started to work with the committee. And I can remind people that Senator Johnson was the head of the Homeland Security Committee in the U.S. Senate, and Senator Grassley was the head of the Finance Committee in the U.S. Senate when they were the majority. So, and they questioned me, and they said, "We're going to get back to you." And they did. In December of 2019, they said, "We want you to provide us evidence on the things we're going to tell you to." And I agreed. Said, "Yes, I will collaborate with your investigation." And at one point, they wanted to give me a subpoena because I had documents that were under a non-disclosure agreement with the Blue Star. I said, "I cannot give it to you because I don't want to get sued for a couple $1 million by Blue Star, and then what's going to happen? Like, let's do it legally. You can give me that." And they couldn't because Romney and another senator backed out because CNN were spreading lies about me in the media and pushing that stuff. And they said, "Oh, we're not going to back this up." So they didn't have the guts even to push a subpoena to get all the documents that I could provide to them. But I provided a lot, which was then used in that investigation and published.
The main objective was to find out about the Hunter Biden situation in Ukraine.
Yes, how it worked. And I didn't want to go against Blue Star at the time. It was not my objective. I got an objective to do that because after they threatened me, Sally Painter wrote a message after I met with Rudy Giuliani in May of 2019. You're going to have troubles and that kind of stuff. It's published there in the report, that message, I believe. So it's then I understood it's a threat. And when you get threatened by people like Sally Painter and Karen Tramontano, you should take it seriously. So I said, I'm going to protect myself by telling the truth again and go with this with the Senate. And that's why I agreed to provide that information to the Senate. And I said, I'm going to do it in legal boundaries. If you want us to do documents, give me a subpoena. I'm not just going to give it up to you because I'm a crazy Ukrainian running around Washington. No. I'll go through the whole legal. I didn't have a lawyer. I couldn't afford a lawyer, even though I was making money doing consulting parallel at the time. I was spending my own money going to Washington, D.C., trying to do this, parallel to what I was working with my clients. So that also has to be understood. Nobody was paying me to do this. This was on my own time and process and dime. So I didn't even hire anybody because I couldn't. In the United States, lawyers are too expensive. And hire somebody from outside, it's impossible because they don't know the legal system. So I was doing everything on my own.
Was it more about Hunter's general kind of arrangements in Ukraine, his contracts and so on, or was it more about the prosecutor being fired, or both?
Everything. They wanted to understand what really happened. Because nobody understood, nobody was going, like, it was so many pieces together. Like we were talking now, we could talk about this for hours, and we're still not going to get to the bottom of it. They wanted to understand what really happened. Was there corruption? How did it happen? What was the role of Blue Star? When they understood the role of Blue Star was basically not just PR firm and lobby firm, but oversee the process for Joe Biden, how it happened off the books, how the meetings with the U.S. Embassy happened, because then everything that I provided to them, they got collaborated with the evidence they were getting from the U.S. Intel. And so it all checked out everything I gave, because I did not just give my own testimony to them. I gave them emails and communication documents. So there was no Russian propaganda or disinformation. That was direct emails and communications which were verified on both sides, my side and the U.S. side, the White House, my communications with Liz Zentos at Chairmanella, how it happened during the White House meetings on Shokin and on Ukraine, how the Biden White House handled that in 2016. So those information they wanted. So it's published there in that report, which if you look in Google, it's hard to find. You can find the minority report from the Democrats where they're happy that they're not happy that I'm being used by Senator Johnson and Grassley's committees as a witness. They're pushing that. And they're writing that in their report, but you cannot find that report. You have to actually look directly in the keywords from the report, and then you'll find it. So that's the interesting also part about this.
So, what was the takeaway then from what you told them? That Hunter Biden was in fact being investigated by the prosecutor's office?
Yes, it was. It was.
That Shokin, Yarema's successor, was actively still investigating?
Yes. And also the role of Blue Star, because how they handled that stuff on how they handled Hunter Biden's case, overseeing it, not just as a PR, but politically, being a back channel to Joe Biden. He knew what Hunter Biden was involved in. He knew that the company was corrupt. So basically, they're preparing the real stuff, a PR report publicly, which was everything's good, Burisma's politically motivated investigation, and at the same time they're doing the real stuff, the black stuff, like the black ledger, which was given to Biden on the report, how, yeah, the company's corrupt like hell, there's criminal investigations going on, your son is doing pretty well, he's making money, Vadim Pozharsky is taking care of him because he's a drug addict. After he receives cash, he goes around ramping that money, spending it on drugs and prostitutions in Europe and Dubai, where other places he is. So that's what the Senate wanted to understand. How did Biden know how bad everything all around that was, and he did. But I could not provide every evidence because, as I said, the committee investigators were not as qualified to dig in and understand ask the right questions. What took us so much information throughout the last 10 years, and the information they provided them, it was not all used in the report, but what was used, it showed a picture that something was wrong with Hunter Biden's role in that. There was corruption. It was not just hunky-dory lobby work or consulting work and everything else. No, there was problems and red flags that had to be looked into further, and then it didn't move forward because I got sanctioned. But I can tell you that I did what I could for Senator Johnson, Senator Grassley's committee.
So you were never able to hand over some of these not all documents which were under non-disclosure. So do they still exist, or?
I believe they do, because after I got sanctioned, my Google account got sanctioned, because I used my Gmail account for all my communications starting from 2014 or 13 and ending with before I got sanctioned, even while I was working in the embassy and the government.
So what happens when you try to log in?
No, it doesn't exist. Like, I was notified that the account got sanctioned, like, because of the sanctions, it got destroyed, like, not destroyed, but basically closed down by Google, but they have it. If you have the Senate or somebody look into Google, they can push out that account and then basically provide that evidence. So that was their role, sanctioning my email, which the only thing they sanctioned because that's where all the evidence was.
I think it's important to recall that in August of 2020, Senators Johnson and Grassley got a briefing from the FBI telling them not to proceed because supposedly they are being subjected to Russian disinformation. Now, one of the FBI agents involved with that was this infamous Timothy Thibault, who was later fired, and there's a lot of horrible stories about him. And it does appear a little bit as if that was an excuse just to shut down the investigation. Did Senator Johnson and Senator Grassley believe the excuse? Did they just go along with it, or?
From what I know now, they did publish the report. They did publish my information. They did publish in the report that I'm not a Russian agent. It says there, because while talking to them, they told me you're checked out by all the intel agencies, I believe they were CIA, FBI, everything checked out. Like, they have no issues with you. And they used my information. But when I got sanctioned and got my visa pulled, it was right a week before the report came out, because I was supposed to go to Washington. When the report would come out, I thought I'd be there. It'd be nice just to support it back and show everybody that will say on there of a Russian agent, this information, that I'm here, and this is the report, to answer anybody's questions. So I got my visa pulled right a week before the report comes out. And when I start calling Johnson and Grassley, they did not pick up. And then from what I was told, they believed at that time that I was a Russian agent. And I don't blame them. I have nothing against them. Like, I forgave everybody who was involved in all this. because that's what we're taught by God and to forgive. But at that time, they could have understood that if the machine is going so hard against this guy, this small Ukrainian Telizhenko, that something wrong is happening. The machine is working so hard to stop him, and it's not just the government, the FBI, and that was disinforming them, but the senators, the U.S. senators that were happy that when I got sanctioned. There were 5 senators who wrote letters on their web pages and Twitter accounts. They have nothing else to do, but they're how happy that Telizhenko got sanctioned.
Well,
That's when you had to understand that something is wrong. Like, I would think maybe it's not just that maybe something is wrong here. It's too political. It's too much to get so attention. The U.S. Their constituents of those senators don't get so attention that Telizhenko got, even not knowing who they are. So this is the reality that we're facing, and that's why I was shocked when people turned away from me at that time.
Let's talk a bit more about the sanctions, because there's the way it works is that there needs to be some kind of legal basis in order to effect these sanctions. Now, in your case, this is Executive Order 13848. Now, when you read that, it is quite striking that 13848 is based on something called the Intelligence Community Assessment of 2017. And what that was the President Obama, in his final days in office before Trump took over in January of 2017, he ordered this assessment basically to explain away how Trump won. And so this assessment came out on January 6th, 2017, and it said Putin helped elect Trump. That's what it said. That piece of paper is the basis of the executive order. It's mentioned in the executive order, which in turn is the legal basis for your sanctions. Now, we know, in the meantime, people have always suspected that the Intelligence Community Assessment was phony, but we now know it is, because the former Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, came out last year in July.
Great woman. Yeah, respect her a lot.
She published the evidence. So the underlying intelligence, first of all, I think it's always hard to double guess what's going on in someone else's mind. What is Putin really thinking? But so I'm not going to give any credence to anyone who says whatever he thinks. That said, the intelligence they had at the time said that he preferred Hillary Clinton. That's in there. At best, he had no preference, but it didn't say that he wanted Trump. So that was just made up. Then they made it into a report, and now that report is used as the basis for sanctioning you. But how does that make you feel?
And I said, lied and betrayed, and by the system that I believed was some democracy and justice that were teaching us that how we should change, and at the same time, the system in the United States is broken by itself, overall, by the deep state and by all these actors. So it's horrifying going through all that, giving all that information, not just as some phony online or some internet show or whatever. I testified to FBI, to the Senate Committee, to the Federal Election Commission. They subpoenaed me in 2019. I actually, under oath, I gave a couple of hour testimony there on witness testimony on what happened with the Chalupa meeting. So it's not just everything on my words in the press, but they're all collaborated with law enforcement, government offices in the United States, the Senate, and then I get sanctioned for that. And I understand why now. Now I understand, because at that time I couldn't understand, because I told the truth and the deep state went after me. And they did it even in the way January, as you said, 11th, 4 years after the article came out, just to punish me because I told the truth on them. I believe if it wasn't for me, a lot of stuff still would not be known. It was then later on pushed, and then other folks like you and Fool and Stefan and everybody else online who actually did more job than the government of the United States did looking into this. and but they punished people who told the truth. So that's what it's heartbreaking for me. Like at the same time, because I believed in the U.S. system at one point. Now I don't.
I still think it has many redeeming features. We'll see, of course, what happens in your case, but just trying to, if I look at it objectively, if I look at it in a scholarly way, I'm of course extremely bothered that there's an executive order against foreign agents, of which you are supposedly one. Again, no evidence, no court, no witnesses, nothing of that sort, just a piece of paper, someone signs it. But okay, maybe there is a purpose for that kind of system. Fine, let's accept that. And then I see in that document, in the executive order, the Intelligence Community Assessment of 2017, which we all know is the Obama, Brennan, what we talked about. That truly, really bothers me in a completely scholarly, academic, intellectual, whatever word you want to use way, because that is just not right. Because the U.S. government has itself admitted through Tulsi Gabbard, and even if you don't believe Tulsi Gabbard, she released the documents. There are actual primary source documents that you could look at where it says the intelligence community has not decided that Vladimir Putin wanted Trump elected. If anything, it was the other way around. That's what it says. So just on the basis of that, to then keep this executive order alive, and then in turn your sanctions alive, is something that, everything else aside, is something that should bother people, no doubt. Now,
having all the evidence at the same time knowing that it was not true. that's
the other thing, of course, we've already mentioned, but I think it's worth repeating. You have spent, how many hours have you spent with high-level U.S. government officials? Hundreds?
Oh, I cannot even count. It was years, maybe, I don't know, a couple of hundred hours.
Yeah. And
I was in the White House officially 5 times, unofficially a bit more.
Well, but you
so
also,
that's
you said you spent an entire day with the FBI, many, but like 1 8-hour session you mentioned, and so on.
The Senate 5 hours, 6 hours. So.
They're very trigger happy to charge people with lying. Well, there's a lot of subject matter there. Why can't you pick out any lies? Maybe there wasn't any lies, and that's something else that.
If I lied to any of those committees or to the FEC, FBI, I would be sent, not sanctioned. I would be imprisoned. I would have a criminal case against me for lying under oath to the Senate, to the FEC, or to the FBI. The case I didn't have an oath there, but there was an agreement that if I would lie, that would have criminal consequences. So that's just to understand, for people to understand that I'm not charged criminally, thank God, and there was nothing to charge me with, I believe, because everything I said was true. They charged me just with a political agenda case using Brennan's, Obama's old lies, and then Trump just backed them up with her signature.
But in some ways it's worse, because you don't know when or if it's ever going to end.
Of course, it's like, as you said, at least in prison you go to, you know what your data is out. Here you don't. I don't have a job, I cannot support my family as a man, even though I did before. I'm afraid to travel. I cannot go to the United States. In all the so-called Western world, I cannot do anything. I go to a bank, try to open an account. The red flag pops up. I'm being escorted by the head of security of the bank to go out because I'm sanctioned by the FEC. Which terrorists are on that list, and they're like, oh, we don't know, maybe you're a terrorist. Even though I'm not sanctioned in Europe or anywhere else in the world, but the problem is banks don't handle people who have U.S. sanctions because the banks handle dollars, and when any bank that handles dollars cannot have a account open to a sanctioned individual by the United States. So it's the whole world system collapses. I cannot, as I said, travel freely, and it's the main thing is not just travel, it's work. I want to work. I'm 35 years old. I have a lot of health issues because of that. People are in the legacy media right now, hopefully Telizhenko's going to die. He's fat and he's going to have a heart attack. That's why they still write about me. And I'm still alive here, thank God. So God is on my side. But I want to work. That's what I want to do. I want to provide for my family. I want to have a future. I lost right now 6 years of my life. It's the 6th year where I cannot do anything. I have no clients. I cannot do anything at all. I cannot work civilized. So this is, for me, it's very important to get it back. And people who were working against Trump, Shudar, who's living in the United States right now, in California, who was working and sabotaging with the Democratic Party. She's doing okay. Charlie, working Poroshenko's team, he's doing okay. He has no problems. Everybody who worked, Chalupa, she's going back and forth between the United States and Australia freely. She has no problems. Like the people I mentioned right now, Shamanella, he's aboard some think tank. They have no problems. They lied. They conspired against the government of the United States and against the people of the United States, and they're okay. I have nothing. I don't want them to go to prison or all. Like, let God decide what's going to happen to them, or faith, whatever. I just want the truth to be done with me, because I believe there's nothing on me, and I just want to get those lies off and be free to do whatever I want. If I want to go to the United States, I will. If I don't want to. Whatever is gonna, I will have to make. I want to make my own decision. So that's why it's like a prison, but you don't know when you're going to come out, because you cannot do whatever. You don't know what's going to happen to you. Maybe you're going to go away in this situation for the rest of your life. I'm not an oligarch with billions of dollars where you have a yacht sanctioned somewhere in Monaco, and then you have money in China or whatever. Something's gonna happen, then you can use it. No, I'm a regular guy who lived his life and had some money at one point and survived until, because I didn't steal. I made for my own life, and I could support myself at least for the first couple of years. But now it's getting harder and harder. So, and I thought, and I believed when Trump won that things would change, and I believe that truth is going to prevail, but hopefully it will. That's why I'm still believing that. That's why we're still talking right now with you. I believe in you, Hans. So, and people like what you're doing is great. Not just because you're interviewing, but you're looking for the truth in this situation. People like you.
We want to, at the Counterlawfare Institute, we want to document what happened in the words of the people who were there. And we've done that. And I thought you just mentioned something very important that probably hasn't been mentioned much at all. That isn't it ironic that you have been sanctioned for alleged election interference? That's the subject line. But all these other Ukrainian people whom you blew the whistle on for election interference live quite happily and in the United States and without any problems. As you said, you don't wish them any bad, but at the same time, there's a fundamental unfairness there that even if we assumed it's kind of he said, she said, you interfered. No, you interfered. Well, on the one hand, there is a penalty, and on the other hand, there's not there's nothing.
Of course, listen, everything that I went under oath and I testified, I did, and they closed a lot of the investigations after I got sanctioned, because I was sanctioned. That was the purpose of this, to close and shut me up. So everything that was done before, it would not have any legal basis. For example, the FEC investigation. The head of the FEC closed it after I got a week after I got sanctioned. We said, oh, because Telizhenko was sanctioned as a Russian agent, we cannot take his evidence as serious, even though Chalupa and the DNC had to hire lawyers and pay money to protect themselves, because they the ones who lied. They broke the law and other stuff, and they didn't want me to go and testify again and get the story on Biden forward, because it already was there in the report, but there's much more that needed to be open. So they didn't want to shut me up, so they did. So I cannot go and testify in the Senate and Congress. They didn't. I'm toxic, and the U.S. government cannot work with me because I'm sanctioned by the government itself without any evidence, and against even though election interference, where I interfered. If I interfered, which way, where? Go and working with the government agencies I just mentioned. Just 4 of them. It's like a lot. It's not like everything that I said publicly was collaborated with the government agencies. So.
Right, it was all done out in the open.
Open, and then officially with under oath testimonies.
Now, kind of thinking ahead, where does this end? Obviously, you are in a situation where as long as the sanctions are in place, you're not going to have your life back. You're a non-person.
Yeah.
I mean, you told some examples of life, and anyone can think of what would their life be if they didn't have any bank at all. There are many things that you just need a bank account for. Booking a car, a hotel, a flight,
Just a job.
paying something. Well, that's
The main
probably
thing.
even the bigger challenge here, not being able to get a job. You lost everything. Now, I think one of the ironies, and the people who have done this to you perhaps want this to happen, is, tell me if I'm right, probably the only place on earth where you could function more or less normally without all these constraints is Russia.
No, yes, Russia, yes.
And then, of course, what would happen is that the people who did this to you would say, oh, look, he was a Russian agent after all because he went to Russia.
Eventually, that's what they wanted me to do.
You haven't done that.
And that they basically wanted me to be destroyed, that and go there and show that we were right about him because they had nothing to prove against me. How?
But it is true. Maybe North Korea. I mean, other
Before Venezuela, maybe in Iran, but
no more. They have literally, in terms of all these issues we talked about, banking, employment,
and also
travel,
I
and so
almost
on.
got killed because of the sanctions. We spoke about this at the beginning. When the conflict in Ukraine was started, I was in Ukraine. And because I was put on the sanction list as a Russian agent, not just asset, a agent, working for the FSB, KGB, whatever they believe, I had the nationalists against me, posting my address online, all my information on the hit list, but also on TV right away. The first 2 days, I get threats on my phone. I had to hide out in Western Ukraine for a month before I could cross the border. So my life, it was not just physical, what I went through, like the banking and the work, but also physical threat of being destroyed and killed, and my whole family with me, just because I was sanctioned by the United States government. Oh, see, the U.S. sanctioned, it proved that he is an agent. So, and they have me on a list, not just on Meritvorit, but also the military intelligence of Ukraine, GUR, on their website as a threat to the national security of the country, because I was sanctioned, and it says, why? United States sanctions. That's it. So it's not just that. I'm afraid of for my life every day living, and some nationalist is going to come around and do something. So this is the reality. These sanctions are not just even economic, and because they're lies, and because they'll prove for you I cannot go out in front of a jury and support myself, but also because it's a death threat to my life in this situation today. How the world is being pumped up against Russia, and Telizhenko is said by a Russian agent by the United States Senate. You go in the AI or United States Treasury, you go into AI, that's what it says. And AI will tell you, oh, because it says at the United States Treasury, then it's a U.S. government document, we should believe in it. So that's how people do. So they put a death mark on me, and they wanted me to go to Russia, and because they thought I would. But I'm still here, and I believe that truth and good will prevail with Trump being a merciful president. There's a lot of stuff talking about mercy and Trump and things that can change right now, and I believe that.
Andrii Telizhenko, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Hans, and thank you, everybody, for your support. God bless.